Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions.
That cover's so awesome.
This is Mr. Chris Claremont, a legend.
Melanie goes,
Tired.
It is finally here, all you Minties, one of my most anticipated Omnis of the year. That's right, today we're going to be taking a look at the Justice League International Omnibus Volume 3 from DC Comics. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, what we are looking at today is the Justice League International Omnibus Volume 3. And here is the top billing, Keith Giffen, J.M. Dematteis, and Kevin Maguire, with this beautiful wraparound image by Kevin Maguire. It's a brand new image just for the book. And there's that spine, Justice League International Omnibus 3 down here, Giffen, Dematteis, and Maguire, the DC logo. And then the back of the book right here. Now, before I take the dust jacket off, I did want to point out this is where the ISBN is, and of course, a little bit about the book and some of the creators. Retail price of this is $150. But let's look at the spine and put it together with volumes 1 and 2, and oh my gosh, there's just something beautiful about the uniform look of spines like this. And this one's pretty thick, considering the paper stock that they're using for it. But over here you do have Giffen, Dematteis, Hughes, and Sears. This time going back to Maguire. And Omnibus, yeah, Justice League International. Look at that. Love it. Love it. Now, there is enough for, of course, a Volume 4, or whether they decide to call it Superman and the Justice League, or Superman and Wonder Woman and the Justice League, whatever it is, I hope they keep making them. But if you want to know where to go next, maybe it's time to update my Justice League reading order. It's Superman and the Justice League. This is the Dan Jurgens era, or what kicks off the Dan Jurgens era. Now, that's only, of course, Justice League of America. There's also Justice League Europe, but I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second. Let's take the dust jacket off here and check out the flaps. Who shot Maxwell Lord? Oh, wow. Didn't expect that there. And then a little bio on the creators, J.M. Dematteis, Kevin Maguire, Bart Sears, Keith Giffen. And this is, of course, the beginning of breakdowns. But this, oh my gosh, so freaking awesome. This beautiful wraparound image by Kevin Maguire just, brings it back home. We have characters like Tasmanian Devil, Blue Jay, the Scarlet Sorceress, and oh my gosh, the Clock King and Multi-Man, and the freaking Scarlet Skier makes an appearance. I mean, when else are you going to see that on the cover? This is just awesome. Some of these characters appearing in multiple story arcs, some of them only appearing in one story, some of them only appearing in one comic, and some of them appearing only in one page, which is just crazy that they make the cover. But then, of course, you have the main league down here, including Maxwell Lord, Blue Beetle, Booster Gold, Fire and Ice, Guy Gardner, Power Girl. It's interesting that he drew her, she's right there next to General Glory, with this outfit, considering she had a different outfit here in this particular era. But yeah, I just can't stop looking at this Rocket Red. Geo-Force, man, I want to see some Batman and the Outsiders Omnibus. Okay, we're going to crack this open. I'm going to talk about the stories collected in here, and then this particular era, and looking at the artwork as well. Alright, let's go ahead and crack this omnibus open. I love that they have this piece right here from formerly known as the Justice League. But you have Justice League International Omnibus Volume 1. Here we go again indeed. The Kevin Maguire collection cover artist. And here are some of your main characters. You have Martian Manhunter, Guy Gardner, Beatrice right here, Fire, and Blue Beetle, Ted Cord, and Ice, and General Glory. And we kick it off with Justice League International Special Volume 2, or issue number 2, rather. And there's also the Justice League Europe annual number 2 collected in here. But everything in here is Justice League America 51 through 60, Secret Origins 33 through 35, Justice League America annual number 5, Green Lantern issue number 18, Justice League Quarterly 2 through 5, JLA 80-page Giant number 1, formerly known as the Justice League 1 through 6, and then the follow-up series, JLA Classified 4 through 9, Justice League Europe 26 through 36, and DC Retroactive JLA the 90s #1. This book has 1,448 pages. And again, retails for $150. So we begin with the international special here that focuses on the character of the Huntress and having a tie to this character known as the Hunter from her past. And it's not that she's jealous that this character is going as the Hunter, but it's what he's doing and her ties to him because she happens to know who he is. And of course, the Justice League gets involved. This is the story of the Scarlet Skier teaming up with Nort, or some people call him Gnort, like my brother, but I think it's Nort. The G is silent, and it's the return of this character right here. It's the return of Mr. Nebula, and of course the Justice League shows up through here. Now, really quick, what I want to say is this era of the Justice League is unlike any other era of the Justice League, because you have this task that was given to J.M. Dematteis and Keith Giffen to make the Justice League a monthly series again, right after the events of DC Legends, and after Crisis, there was no more Justice League. So they were like, sure, we'll do it. They couldn't use Superman, they couldn't use Wonder Woman, they couldn't use Flash. So they were like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And they made something so unique and way ahead of its time. I love this Fire and Ice versus Captain Cold and Heatwave issue right here, the backup of the 80-page giant. And they didn't know if it was going to work, so they introduced you to characters, like newer characters that weren't around, like Captain Atom, and of course, Captain Marvel, Shazam, and then Booster Gold, Blue Beetle. They did get use, or I think it was because I always heard rumors that Dick Giordano felt sorry for them, so he let them use Batman, but Martian Manhunter was also a part of that. But eventually, it was so popular that the series spun out, that it became Justice League America and then Justice League Europe. It was that big. Like, these books were selling. And it was like this sitcom type of story where, like, I'll point out some of the stories through here, where you're not going through, like, big crises type of events. You're going through just characters and getting to know each other. And not everybody gets along. I think everybody probably remembers, even if you haven't read any of the JLI, you probably know about the Batman versus Guy Gardner. Guy Gardner just gets tired of Batman. I think it was in issue number 5. And Batman just takes him out. One punch. He challenges Batman. Batman just takes him out with one punch. And Guy Gardner spends the rest of the issue just knocked out. But anyway, the series grew in popularity so much that it spun out into 2 different series. So the characters are split up into 2 different teams. You still have Maxwell Lord being their liaison to the UN. And you still have characters going back and forth between 2 teams. This is some artwork here by Bart Sears. Keith Giffen actually doing the breakdowns of a lot of the stuff. That is one thing I didn't see, was usually they have the credits of like the different writers and artists throughout the book, but I mean they're still intact within the issue. Like you can see here who wrote it, who inked it, who the colorist was, so that is still here, but it's not in the front where I'm so used to it in omnibus formats. So this is the Starro issues where the Justice League is fighting other members of the Justice League because Starro is taken over. You have Metamorpho, you have Power Girl looking like this now, Booster Gold, Rocket Red, Captain Atom is leading one of the teams, Martian Manhunter's leading the others, and you have some new players too, and some players that have come from another world or another dimension, if you will. And a couple of them are the Silver Sorceress, this lady right here, and Blue Jay. Silver Sorceress is kind of like DC's version of the Scarlet Witch in a way that she uses her powers and stuff. She's a really interesting character. And this series also gets put under the humor category. That's something that I see quite often. People that are like, oh, it's the funny Justice League. But it's just so much more than that. Like, there's a lot of heart in this particular series. And a lot of character development that happens throughout the series. And I think that's a very big misconception when it comes to these particular stories, that it's just thrown off as, like, just humor. But there's a lot of heart and a lot of deep stories in here. This one here, for example, is My Dinner with Nort. And it's all about Martian Manhunter, Nort, and Kilowog just trying to go eat at a restaurant. And of course, it's not going to work out for them. But something big happens at the end of that particular story that leads into the next story arc. And then you have the Justice League Quarterly books here. Oh man, and I love the Justice League Quarterly books. This has the Injustice League story in there. So you see the Clock King, and you see Major Disaster, Big Sur, Multi Man, and then of course the might. I said this Multi Man right here, and the Clue Master. But it's just a story about them, and you never really see the Justice League through here, but it's focusing on just how goofy and ridiculous these characters are. And then you do have the backup stories that feature other Justice League members at the time. You have Mark Waid and Mike McKone's Be Careful What You Wish For story that has Starman in there. Somebody is going around and taking these big A-list characters, taking their powers away from them. And the Justice League has to find out who it is. So, I mean, there's still stakes are kind of high through here. You have this guy that's obsessed with ice, and he gets himself a costume and tries to overpower her. This is one of my favorite issues of this entire omnibus. By the way, I'm just going to come out and say it. I haven't read some of these stories in years. I'm talking decades. I used to have the entire run, and I'm talking, oh my gosh, it's been at least 20 years since I've read some of these in here. This is where Ted Kord, Blue Beetle, he's gaining a little weight, right? And Guy Gardner, being the ass that he is, calls him out for being a little tubby. So they have a boxing match. And it's a ridiculous story, but there's a lot of layers there because of the way that Guy Gardner reacts to what happens at the end. And the way Ice reacts to that reaction. And you're like, man, I'm reading a sitcom slash soap opera, and I'm loving every minute of it. And that leads into the breakdown story, which is this huge, huge event, and is also known as the end of the J.M. Dematteis and Keith Giffen run. And you can see there's still a lot to this omnibus. There are tie-ins in here, like that Green Lantern issue. So the basic idea behind this is somebody has shot Maxwell Lord, who, as I mentioned earlier, is the liaison to the UN for the Justice League, but he's also, their friend, the guy that funds them. And when he is shot, what ends up happening is that they end up getting a new liaison. And this new guy ends up firing some of these team members, and they're being replaced by other characters. There's also, this is what I mean by breakdown. It's just such a big story. There are the annuals in here that are tie-ins to Armageddon 2001, just featuring Wave Rider coming in and kind of interacting with just Maxwell Lord while he's in a coma. And there is L. Ron, of course named after L. Ron Hubbard. The 2001 tie-in has little to do with breakdowns and more to do with the 2001 overall story. And it's interesting because you start seeing something happening through here that makes you think, the original idea for 2001's ending is kind of hinted at through these issues right here. I think that's really cool in the way that particularly one character is acting. But this is mainly your Justice League during this time. You have Crimson Fox, you have General Glory, you've got Elrond, this is the new liaison, and he's splitting up the team, and he's going to bring in some new members. He's firing people, and Rocket Red, Power Girl, this is her costume. Elongate, I didn't even talk about Sue Dibney and Elongated, man. I love those characters. Then you have Catherine here, Catherine Cobert, who was the original liaison to the UN for the Justice League. And these are the type of characters you're going to be reading about. So in breakdowns, what happens is after some of the team members are replaced by Dr. Light and by the Tasmanian Devil, there's a huge misunderstanding. And they think that they know the person who has shot Maxwell Lord. So what they do is some of the team under, I guess, the guidance of Captain Atom takes off and goes to Bialia, I think is the name of the country, where they try, this is when Tasmanian Devil comes in and is replacing some of the team members. But they go to Bialia, that's it. and they try to confront Queen Bee, who they think is behind shooting Maxwell Lord. And what ends up happening is Jack-O-Lantern, this guy right here, ends up awakening the global guardians who've been turned into drones by the Queen Bee. And there's some things that happen through here that are kind of shocking, and you don't know where exactly the Justice League is going to go after this. It's a really interesting series. I've really liked all of this. And honestly, Breakdowns is the story that brought me back to the Justice League comic. Because at the time, oh, there's some early Derek Robertson artwork, by the way, Sue and Ralph. At the time, I wasn't getting Justice League. I had stopped getting Justice League because they were splitting up into two teams. And I thought, well, I'm just going to focus on X-Men because I'm limited to funds. You know, I was in middle school and I was saving up my money that I would get from working on tobacco fields and stuff like that during the summer. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to focus on X-Men and maybe Batman from time to time. Well, I was at Walmart with my mom and dad, and I ended up running into a particular issue, which this is the Green Lantern tie-in right there. This is the Green Lantern breakdowns tie-in right there with Guy Gardner during this time, the Return of Gold phase. Anyway, I ran into a particular issue, and that's this one right here, Breakdowns Part 9. So I bought it because of the cover. Because I've always, that's Chris Sprouse, by the way, I've always liked the Extremists. They're from another dimension. They were the obvious in-your-face Marvel ripoff character. Oh, Beefeater's here. Marvel ripoff, like the ripoff of the villains. I always love this page. Hate, Earth, Justice League, Destroy. When the Sparrow comes back, I was like, oh, what's that about? And who the hell is this guy? Because I hadn't kept up with them for about a year or so. So I bought this because I like the Extremists and I thought they were coming back. So these are your characters that are, of course, based on like Doctor Doom and Doc Ock, Magneto. And let's see, where are they? Of course, when I'm talking about them, they're nowhere. There he is. There's Lord Havoc right there. There's Dr. Diehard. There he is. And Gorgon and Tracker. Or, oh, no, Tracer, not Tracker. It's kind of like your Craven the Hunter, maybe a little bit of Sabretooth, and then, of course, the Dream Slayer, who plays a big part in Breakdowns, too. Lobo makes an appearance, but the Sparrow's just going after the Justice League. After I bought that issue, I was like, this is part 9 of how many? And I thought it was a big crossover I was missing, so I had to track down the other issues at the comic book store, and they didn't have part 1, so I had to wait. I think I ordered it from... Oh, what was that mail order service? The American Eagle? Was it American Comics? Whatever it was, I ended up ordering it through there. Now, as much humor and as much sitcoms as there are in here, there's also a lot of sadness. There's some deep character studies through here. There are characters that don't make it past this omnibus. And there's a lot of heart with some of these characters that are just left behind, if you will. And I think there's some beauty to that. These are the Secret Origins issues, which just focus on the Justice League members, or the Justice League International members right here, one by one. And they go through a series of 4 different issues told by different writers and different artists. Now, the coolest thing that's in here, let's actually look at this really quick, is after the Secret Origins. By the way, this is mapped wonderfully. It's really difficult to know where to put those Armageddon 2001 issues, and I think they did a phenomenal job putting them where they did, especially when they're part of Breakdowns, but not 100% part of them. So you have the JLA 80-page giant right here, and it's only material from, and just focusing on Guy Gardner and Blue Beetle and Booster Gold. So you do have Keith Giffen and Kevin Maguire working on this particular story, with Carl Story coming in as the inker. It's not very long, but I think that got some cogs turning because we got a miniseries at a much needed time at DC Comics, and that's formerly known as the Justice League. I believe it came out in 2003 or so. So it was a mini-series, and I ended up picking it up because I was like, I immediately recognized the art, and I saw Keith Giffen and J.M. Dematteis attached to the project, and I was like, yes! This is such an interesting book at an interesting time. So this is a 6-issue miniseries, and it's reuniting the 1980s incarnation of the team, that JLI from the first issue. But it's done in a very unique way. So you have Maxwell Lord, who's trying to recruit Elron, his robot servant that has gone sentient, and he's working at a drive-through, and he's like, "You gotta come with me." And he's like, "I'm working on a work visa. I can't leave." And he's like, "Well, you're coming with me because we're gonna build a non-profit superhero team." So they go to a strip mall, not a Hall of Justice, not anything fancy, and he starts recruiting the team one by one. He gets Blue Beetle, he gets Ralph and Sue Dibney fired during this time, and Captain Atom right here, who looks a little bit different. And I love the fact that Captain Atom is told, you can't wear this ridiculous outfit. You have to wear your classic outfit. This is in comic books. And this is during, what was it, the Wildstorm era, when he was switching out with another character too. Keep in mind, this is before Infinite Crisis. Now, when they try to go and recruit Billy Batson, Billy Batson just remembers the bad time. Remember, you have to have read the first volume to understand why Billy's like, no, I don't want to go. All you guys did was make fun of me. So his sister ends up going. Mary Marvel ends up going. Now, Mary, much like Billy, is I think she's 16 that can transform into a young lady, an adult, probably 19, 20-year-old. But she decides that she wants to join the team. So they're trying to decide on a name. There's Captain Atom, and they call themselves the Super Buddies. I think the original pitch for the comic was supposed to be 1-800 Super Buddies. That was supposed to be the original idea. But it's just Maxwell Lord running this team out of a strip mall that used to be Justice League members, and nobody takes them seriously. Some old villains show up through here. And this is actually where you see Roulette. That's one of the villains that shows up through here. And a couple of other surprises. Now, the series was so popular that it did spin out into another series. I think they were going to do a following miniseries, but instead they put it into the JLA classified stories. And this is the I Can't Believe It's Not the Justice League story. Again, back at the strip mall, and this is where Sue Dibney. This is where Sue really shines. I really like her in this because it's gone back to like her old days, where there's a bar that's opening up and she wants to get it shut down, and it turns out that there's an ex supervillain, a reformed supervillain that's opening it up, and she doesn't want anything to do with it, so she's getting on Max. I love their relationship. One thing leads into another, and the team ends up going to hell. And of course, it has something to do with Guy Gardner just being Guy Gardner. Now, there's all these silly things that are going on in hell, and again, this is the stuff that happens after the Justice League ended. So it's about 10 years after J.M. Dematteis and Keith Giffen left the books, and so much had happened. And I mean so much, there were characters that died. And one of the things that happens in here is so heartbreaking when you're talking about a story of the Justice League being forced to like work at a fast food place in hell, and something just heartbreaking happens through here that made me miss this era of just fun and goofiness, and the stakes weren't that high because all of this, again, taking place before Infinite Crisis or Countdown or the OMAC project. And if you know that story, you know what I'm talking about with some of the characters and where they go. But there's definitely a heartbreaking scene in there that I just absolutely loved. And the extras. So this is a beautiful piece right here that was done by Kevin Maguire in honor of his friend and colleague Keith Giffen, who we lost last year, and including all of his creations at DC Comics. So Ambush Bug, man, Elron and Maxwell Lord and Jaime Reyes, Blue Beetle, The Heckler, Manga Con, just to name a few, and of course this guy. And then in memory of Keith Giffen, I love this. This is like creators like Jeff Lemire, Jim Lee, Mark Waid, J.M. Dematteis, Paul Levitz, writers at the time that worked with him, Colleen Doran, just thanking Keith Giffen for her career. But one of my favorite ones is by Kevin Maguire. A wise ass until the end. May the wings of angels fly you on your new adventure, you magnificent bastard. Oh, I love that. And then you have some original artwork back here. And the source book, this is for, I believe, a role-playing game. This is all done by Kevin Maguire. And then the bio on the creators. Now, let's take a look at the build of the book. The book has 1,448 pages, and there's that eye. It does have sewn binding. We've seen bigger, and we've seen a lot smaller. But the one big significant difference is the paper stock. It's no longer using the thick, glossy paper from Justice League International Omnibus Volumes 1 and 2. It's using this new satin type paper, so it's not really glossy, but it's also not really matte paper. And there is a little bit of bleed through coming from the opposite pages. So, something that you've seen, in like the iMac printers from Marvel Comics. It's very similar to that, but the paper stock isn't glossy. And the way that it lays over, there is a little bit of gutter loss, but most of the pages through here aren't spread pages. If anything, you get some splash pages from time to time. Damn, this brought back some memories. I read it cover to cover. It took me 3 days because it's a big book. But I said everything. I think all I did was just watch one episode of X-Men yesterday. And then I'm like, I got to stay up and finish reading this. Loved it. Probably my second favorite out of the JLI Omnis. Just for that breakdown story and the formulae. And the I can't believe it's not stories in the back. Completely worth it if you're a fan of this era. Hope there's a volume 4. But that's it. That, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing this omnibus, don't forget to check out our sponsors.
If you're in Europe and you're interested in buying these books, definitely check out Walt's Comic Shop in Berlin, Germany. They have the cheapest pre-order prices, flat shipping rate of €12 for all EU countries, emails answered within 24 hours, waltscomicshop.com, and you can use the code nearmintcondition at checkout and get free shipping for all EU countries with your first order over €40. That's Walt's Comic Shop, your reliable source for omnis and premium collected editions in Europe. Ding!
cheapgraphicnovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was the content, the page count, and build of this book. Let me know in the comments down below if you are picking this up, if you have the previous two, if you hope they continue the series with a Superman in the Justice League Omnibus, Superman and Wonder Woman in the Justice League Omnibus, or how they should continue it, or just Justice League International Omnibus Volume 4. If you have any questions, leave them down below. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, and ring that bell for notifications. Everyone, stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.